And here we are. Oh, got a super chat. Thank you. Wow, thank you, Mr. Chauvin. That's very kind of you. Hail Kurgan, I won't be able to catch the stream. Just wanted to let you know that Nancy Moon is a great read so far. The money is entered for the 1911 fund. God bless you and your family. Thank you very much, sir. That's 50 more dollars, almost 50 euros, I guess, going to the fund. Well, with that one, I'll be quarter of the way there. And I'm going to try and match it as well. Well, boys, we got a very interesting stream tonight, so I hope that you're ready to enjoy. I've got my small espresso, which is probably going to make me hurl my guts because it's pretty strong, but I've had a very long day and I want to be awake for this one. So, and then if that gets me too awake, I've got some frizzantino here to put me back to sleep. Thank you, Mr. Cooper Chauvin, with that $50 super chat. Before I start, while we wait for a couple of you guys to rock in, look what I did. Yep, I built this, basically this, I don't know if you can see it there. Can you see that? Yeah, the little IKEA thing. So this was actually a pretty cool knife, but you know the IKEA ones, they come with like this rubber handles. And it just got degraded. I don't know if because of the washing machine or I don't remember. Anyway, so it lost the handle ages ago, and then I'd done a handle out of like just a piece of metal pipe, which I like hammered into like shape to hold this thing. And like when I did it, it just looked rough. You know, my wife was like, "Ah, that just looks ugly," and then it became like her favorite knife to use. But the other day when I pulled it out of the dishwasher, I saw that it was just a tube of metal and it was being corroded, so it had like rust and stuff, which I don't want that in the dishwasher. So I took that off, and a piece of olive branch, and then I drilled through the little metal tang that's there, and you can see that that's actually like a piece of a rivet. I actually took the rivet thing off and I just hammered it through the hole, and then I put some wood glue. That's what you see at the front there. That's why it looks a little bit, that's not dirt, it's that wood glue that like got when it dries out. And then I oiled it with olive oil, and it's a pretty cool knife. Sharpened it. Awesome. So there you go. Anyway, so today we're going to be talking about Nazi super weapons. Just to stay in theme with the Nazi moon, which, by the way, if you guys want to, there's a couple of you have already like bought it, so thank you for that. I don't know if you're on the chat or not, but I've tried to sort of get away a little bit from Amazon in terms of the ebooks. Ebooks on Amazon never really worked very well. I even got like professional guys to do the covers and to do the books, and they never really worked. So I'm going to put a link in the chat here, and all my ebooks are going to be on there. And eventually, my books will make it to ebooks. So that's the link. And you can get Nazi Moon there for, half. Not half. It's, what is it? It's about $20. And like on Amazon, it's like $30. Okay, it's an ebook, but it, took me like 30 years or so to finish that little trilogy. Because I had the first dream about that book in the 1993, 4, maybe 5, something like that. So nearly 30 years to get it out. So I figured $10 for 10 years is not too expensive. But anyway, about Nazi super weapons. Now, for those of you that are interested, I'm going to show you some books that are sort of required reading if you're interested in this stuff. So this one here is called Dark Star by Henry Stevens. And the subtitle is The Hidden History of German Secret Bases, Flying Discs, and U-Boats. This is probably the go-to book. This guy is the one that did probably the most research on all of this. And there's some very interesting little, there you go. That's like Spanish. Los ovnis son armas de los nazis. So that's Argentinian stuff saying, the UFOs are like Nazi weapons. So the stuff that is written in Nazi Moon, which, is my book that's out, and if you go there, you can see if you go to the ebooks, you can see it as an ebook, but it's also available if you want the paper. Just go to Amazon, Google my name, and it's on there. And this is another book which it's not very well written, but it's called The Hidden Nazi, and it's the untold story of America's deal with the devil. And it's about Hans Kammler. Now, Kammler was a very interesting guy because he essentially was in charge of all the underground facilities where all the secret weapons were built. So the secret facilities were called S1, S2, S3. And I can't remember which one was also the Peenemünde one where they built the V1s and V2s and so on. But Kammler was the guy that was building these facilities, and they were huge. They were like huge underground facilities for all these like secret weapons and stuff. Or Wunderwaffen, as they call them, wonder weapons. And some really nefarious shit went on down there. Apparently, when Kammler, you see, the thing about the Second World War is you don't really know what's true and what's lies because it's just so, there's just so much propaganda on both sides and trying to cover up what really happened and trying to like make a narrative of what happened and why. And so it's really difficult to know what's really true. But apparently, and I believe this is probably likely, when the Allies were about to capture or get into the areas where the S1, S2, S3 were, apparently Kammler got all the scientists out of there and potentially killed a whole bunch of them and destroyed all the paperwork. Now, what were they really trying to hide? And here we get to another book by a guy who's written quite a lot of books that are Joseph Farrell. That's his name, Joseph P. Farrell. If you're interested in Nazi stuff, weird things, Joseph Farrell is kind of a go-to guy. His books are pretty horrifically like laid out. This one is not too bad, but some of his older books are like let's just say the layout is not what I would consider like a perfectly logical flow, but it does have a lot of information in there. And this is called the SS Brotherhood of the Bell. Now the bell, or the Glocke, as it was called, because of the shape, and you can see the shape there, was a very advanced high-tech thing that was essentially researching, or the speculation is it was basically looking into like anti-gravity technology, or it developed into anti-gravity technology. Now, that's not the only thing it did. There are all sorts of reports. Once again, it's hard to know what's real and what's fake and what's exaggerated. Who knows? But sorry, I'm just trying to clear. I've got a bunch of books because I've been writing, and I've also been trying to finish up another little book that I started. The Glocke was not just an anti-gravity technology research, it was apparently also to do with time. It apparently affected time. Apparently it could rot living things very quickly, or sometimes apparently freeze time so that they wouldn't like age. This was reported to be the case with plants, but also with human beings, because apparently they used the slave labor, or they used some of the concentration camp prisoners to see what the effects were of this Glocke. And there are, again, unconfirmed, or let's say unverified, but how do you verify these things? Reports that this bell, the Glocke, was also causing things to dematerialize and rematerialize. So sort of like another story about that was the ship that apparently in like I think 47, Berlitz wrote about this. I forget the name. The American military tried to do the same thing with like this ship that they tried to make go invisible, and it sort of worked, but like a bunch of people went crazy. Apparently, a bunch of people were like melted into the actual surface of the ship. So it's like was throwing things out of phase, so that the like if you ever read the X-Men, like Kitty, that girl that can just like walk through walls and stuff, so she can like also grab somebody and like make them like her, like a ghost thing, but then she lets them go halfway into a wall and like they're like half in the wall, half out. And apparently this happened to like some of the seamen on aboard this ship, which was called a, oh, it'll come to me, one of you guys will know, put it in the chat. And I read about that ages ago. Now apparently they were using like stuff from, you know, information from Tesla, information from quantum mechanics, blah blah blah. But really, the Germans were there first with this Glocke. So if it is true that it could put things out of phase, and then when the effect stops or whatever, like some people were like halfway in a wall, or like like their hand was like through the wall, and then they come back and they're like stuck inside it. That sort of thing is apparently what happened with this Glocke thing, which to me makes sort of sense for a number of reasons. Because anti-gravity is a fact. Anti-gravity exists. It's a thing. Thomas Townsend Brown figured it out in 1928. Oh, and by the way, if you want to get the skinny, as they say, on this whole thing, on all the technology, on what you can do with it, on the human history, there you go. This book, The Face on Mars, just go on Amazon. It's not available in the ebook format, and it won't be for a long time, because I'll just show you. I'll just flip. You see all these footnotes? They are on every page. Then there's diagrams, there's photographs, there's all sorts of stuff in here. So it's just really painful to try and put that in an ebook format. Although I've got some software now that really very helpful, but it's going to take a while. So if you want really to save yourself years of putting this stuff together and going down rabbit holes that are dead ends, get that book, because I wrote it in 1995. That's when it came out, towards the end of 95. But it compiled it in the intervening 28 years. Nothing that's in that book has been outdated, and some of the predictions in that book have since been verified. And I've updated it in 2014. So about 10 years ago, I did an update on it. And even when I managed to do the ebook version, I'll update that as well again, although there's really not a lot more to update in the last 10 years. But it's an extremely good reference book, because it gives you all the references to all the connecting pieces. It tells you where I got the information from. It tells you who the people involved were. So it's got a lot of that stuff in. So if you want to understand, and I recently wrote the blog post. It's actually the blog post that's up now. If you haven't read that blog post, please go read it, because if you really want to understand how this planet works, if you really, really want to get a handle on things, and I mentioned this in the blog post, there's two ways. You've got the engineer's way, which is go through all the information that I've put together over the last 30 plus years, which is The Face on Mars, Reclaiming the Catholic Church. Those two books, I would say primarily. And then I would say read also The Nazi Moon, which is a science fiction. It's not, The Face on Mars and Reclaiming the Catholic Church are non-fiction. If you understand those two books and the history that's connected between them, Nazi Moon gives the connecting threads of possibilities that you can have, which may well be real. And the trilogy of the Overlords of Mars, which is all in one book, in that Nazi Moon book, is yes, it's fiction, and it's got fictional characters and whatever, but there's not as much fiction in there as you think there might be. So USS Eldridge, thank you, sir. I knew that Chad would be the man and would know. The Philadelphia experiment. Thank you, sir. Yes, I knew it was. I was in my head. I was mixing up the Philadelphia experiment and the name of the USS Eldridge. So I Couldn't come up with what it was. So if you really want to understand, you guys, those of you that think, oh, the last 3-4 years has really shown us what's going on this planet, and there's a bunch of people running the world, and they belong to a particular tribe, and and you can think all of that, and you've only got, let me do it with my little glass of wine. Okay, if you understand that all the last conspiracy theories of the last 30 years basically are all real, from whatever, 9/11 to the current ones, and let's say you understand all of those, JFK, all of that, you understand all of that, and you think you kind of know how the world works and who runs it, this is how much you know. Just the top little layer there. If you read The Face on Mars, if you read Reclaiming the Catholic Church, and you connect those two things together with the Nazi moon as a story. Nazi moon is a story, but remember that as human beings, stories are the ways we learn best. So if you want the hardcore facts, Face on Mars. And also read Reclaiming the Catholic Church, because that'll change your perspective on what Christianity really is. Those two books and Nazi moon as the linking storyline, your knowledge of the human condition on this planet will go from here to there. And everything will make a lot more sense, including all the economical, financial shit that's going on. Oh, and there's another little short story which actually got a little bit crippled by Vox's editing, because he didn't understand why I was doing what I was doing. So he just chopped out what was actually the core message of the short story. The short story works on its own without that core message, but you guys know that there is the shadow banking that's going on in the world. In other words, banking transactions that are lost, that no one knows where that money goes or what gets used for. The shadow banking on this planet, and I'm talking about 15, 20 years ago already, had the same size as all the money in all of the planet that moves around every year, which at the time I think was about $85 trillion. So $85 trillion is the global GDP, if you want to call it, or the global amount of money that gets moved around. Well, there's shadow banking of an equivalent amount that just nobody knows where it goes, just sort of, which you can infer from, and it was a study done by an Italian guy, a couple of people, one of them was Italian, David something or other, I can't remember his name. But anyway, that short story is in the Red Horse Riding anthology that Fox published. But I will reissue that short story in full without the editing that Fox did, and it'll put another perspective on it. Now, what the hell is the same amount of money that's used all over this planet is just sort of disappearing? Well, there's a very simple answer for that: black projects. What kind of black projects that use up the whole economy of the planet? Off-planet black projects. And there are very, very sound reasons for believing that there are off-planet bases already on the moon and probably on Mars. And there are very, very sound reasons for this, not just Lulu. There's a guy that was a guy on YouTube, and I didn't get his name at the time because after I figured it out, I was 26 years old when I wrote this, The Face on Mars. Finished, I was 26 years old. I was like, shit, I now figured out how this planet works. I'm like, fuck it. What's the point? I'm just gonna write books or take pictures or just trying to live through the cracks, because it's all bullshit. It's all a lie. The entire global money system is fake, and it absolutely is. And by the way, I will be doing another post in the next day or two about how that banking system works, because I figured this out when I was between the ages of 4 and 7. I was trying to understand the money system and what is the system? What is money? How does it work? And by the age of 7, I figured out that it's too complicated. I'm probably getting something wrong because it doesn't make any sense to me. As a 7-year-old, I was like, this system just totally screwed. It doesn't sound like it makes any sense. It was about 20 years later when I sort of realized, no, I was right. I was right as a 7-year-old. It doesn't make any fucking sense. It's absolutely arbitrary. It's complete fucking nonsense. And it's based on nothing. So imagine, I'm now 26. I worked with a gun every day. I was doing karate every day, and I was working as a bodyguard, and writing my right. I wrote The Face on Mars, and I was like, fuck it. Everything that goes on this planet is a lie. They just lie to you constantly. Everything you see on the news is a lie. Everything that you get told on TV is a lie. It's all a fucking lie. So whatever, I'm just gonna try and just do what I want and like live, because I can't get off planet. I don't have one of these little anti-gravity machines. I'd love to have one to just get the fuck off this planet. Just go check shit out. Go and like um, learn some shit. Find out about little blue alien chicks. Whatever. I want to find out the hot blue alien chicks. Where are they? But I don't have an anti-gravity machine, so and I'm probably not going to get one. So, and then after I wrote that book, I started to get like, my phones are tapped. I was burglared. Like the video that I had of like UFOs that I filmed got taken. I met some really weird, interesting people. I met the daughter of an admiral in the UK, who was like she was like a straight A student, like a hardcore like you know military girl that raised that way of very high society, and she lost like a couple of months of her life. She doesn't remember what the fuck happened, and she woke up in a field. She was hooked on drugs, and no memory of how she got there for the last 2 months, with some random guy who just banged her in a field somewhere in England. And I was doing talks around the UK at the time. And she came up to me and she told me who she was, and she gave me her name and everything. And I verified this stuff because I thought, fuck, there was crazy people. I did meet crazy people. I met guys that were like, oh, I know about the crop circles, and you wrote about the Martians and the crop circles. Look, I've done all these calculations. It's like a homeless guy with like all these calculations written down. And it's like, all right, dude, just move away. You stink. So I certainly met crazy people, but I also met people that weren't crazy at all. And this girl was one of them. And she was like, I don't know what the fuck happened to me. And like, can you like, what do you think? And I was like, look, at first I thought she was maybe just some crazy chick. And she was like, she was there with her girlfriend, which was like, this is my girlfriend, because then I realized, and I tracked down, I figured out what had happened to me is like, I got these 2 months missing, and I was hooked on drugs, and I had never touched drugs before. I'd never been anywhere near drugs. And I've been banged by all these guys. I've been basically, kind of just passed around like while I was in a drug haze. And I tried to rebuild what the fuck happened. And the last thing I could remember was 2 months earlier, where I was in my apartment, which has since been given up. There's other people living there. All my stuff is gone. And I went to my dad. I was like, what the fuck's going on? And my dad was just like, oh, no, he wouldn't like get any contact with me. So I was like, fuck, all these men had used me, and I was like, I just needed a friend. And so now I'm kind of like a lesbian, but I've never been a lesbian. I don't want to be a lesbian. And, and she was telling me this in front of like her girlfriend, who was kind of like, you know, and I was like, okay, this sounds like fucked up. But she gave me her name. So I looked it up, and I looked up the story, the history of this admiral, and sure as fuck, he had a daughter, and it was her. Like I tracked down a photograph of her, and it was like, fuck, it's real. And this poor girl, I just told her, look, I don't know, you found out something that you weren't supposed to find out, or shit like that. She's not the only person that I met that missed got memory. There's a guy who was actually a really cool guy. I really like him, and his wife. I kind of lost touch with him, unfortunately, because of like bullshit family stuff and whatever. But anyway, but he was in the Navy, and very clever dude. He's very high up on telecoms and communications and stuff like that. And he was in the Navy. He was like a British Navy. He was like in a submarine or something. Again, admiral submarines. And he woke up in hospital that they had done an operation on his knees and on his back, and he was like, "What the fuck am I doing here?" And he told me this story after we got to know each other a little bit, and he said, "Man, the stuff you talk about, that sort of rings a bell, but whenever I try and think about that stuff, I can't. It's just like my brain doesn't want to go there. So this happens, you know, and I've had psyops done on me. I've had like, you know, weird sort of emails, people trying to tell me shit. But the thing is, I said it in the book, The Face on Mars. I've said it in my Systema book. The thing is, anti-gravity technology being a reality means that it's dangerous shit. Look, with an anti-gravity machine the size of a car, right? What you can do is you can create gravity fields, which means you can create a gravity field to change the direction of an asteroid, which means you can get an asteroid to land anywhere you like on Earth. And if you think an atom bomb's a weapon, well, it fucking isn't. You know, it's a spitball. You can set off 100 atom bombs on this planet and we'll be fine. Not if you're right next to when it goes off, but I mean, you know, for one asteroid, one 30-kilometer asteroid traveling at 30 kilometers per second, it hits just about anywhere, will fuck all of us up. So you can't have anti-gravity machine just like floating around, you know. It's just, you can't have everybody have access to that shit. You've got to have like very secure things in place. And I'm very well aware of this. And I put it in the book. I said, you know, I'm okay with there being super tight controls on that shit. I'd be okay with one. I wouldn't blow the planet up or kill any of the hot blue chicks that are out there or whatever. I'd be fine with it. But, you know, not everybody's like me, a nice guy, you know? And so I get that. Unfortunately, I also think that the people that do have control of this stuff are not necessarily nice people. Maybe there are some that are nice, maybe there are some that aren't nice, and maybe you can't really make a distinction once you get to a certain point, which is, by the way, all that stuff, if you want to read books that go into this and like delve into like, what would happen? What would it mean to have anti-gravity technology? What would it mean if the Nazis really did have bases in Antarctica and then went on the moon? Because they did have bases in Antarctica. Well, that's what Nazi Moon is about. So again, the link is up there in the chat for the ebook. If you want the Amazon book, go on Amazon, you get the paper copy. It's 827 pages because it's 3 books in one. So, but what I'm saying is this stuff is not nonsense. It's not like out of nowhere. Base 211 was in Antarctica. Now, do I believe the Nazis had bases in Antarctica? Yes. You know, if I had to bet my life on it one way or the other, I would bet that the Nazis absolutely had bases in Antarctica. Why? Because the Nazis had secret bases fucking everywhere. They had bases on the Spanish islands. You know, what are they? They had bases on the Greek islands. They had bases fucking everywhere. What are those like Spanish islands off the, not Mallorca. Anyway, they had a bunch of secret bases all over South America. And, you know, again, these are not theories. There's films and photographs of this like super cool villa in the middle of the Amazon jungle that you can only get there by boat. They had bases, underground bases under the islands of the, I don't know, the name escapes me now, the Canary Islands, with submarines. They had submarine bases under the island. They were constructed, full service, huge submarine bases that they're still there. They had bases in South Africa. They had bases all around the world. And base 211 was in Antarctica. Oh, no, they didn't. Yes, they did. Now, if a base is called 211, Germans being Germans, you know, imagination wasn't really their thing. They were more like, we will do this and we will do it correctly, starting from number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 211. So how many bases do you think they had? They had plenty. And why wouldn't they have bases? Nimitz, the admiral, the only guy of the Nazi party that actually sort of surrendered at the end of the war, is on record, on radio, saying, oh, they will never get us. And anyway, even if they do, we have created a Shangri-La amongst the ice for our Führer. Hitler did not die in the bunker. The Russians have always known this. The little piece of skeleton that's supposed to be his skull belongs to a woman. The photograph of so-called dead Hitler is not Hitler because it's taken from the side and you can see his ear. And the Allies didn't know this, but the Russians did. The ear is like a fingerprint. Your ear is is a very unique sort of shape, and it didn't match Hitler's ear. Now, oh, you guys are firing it up in the chat. Good, good. Let me see. Yes, the USS Eldridge, that was Philadelphia experiment. I'm coming back to it. I haven't lost the thread. Give me a second. Yeah, small change, but I recall as a teenager, $1 billion disappeared from Israel's pension fund. Memory hold completely by now. Yeah, it is small change. We're talking about 15, 20 years ago, $85 trillion, which was the size of the global economy. Shadow banked, gone. Like nobody knows where that fucking money is gone. One wonders, and it was done by interferometry essentially. It was economic interferometry. You know, like you use interferometry to like see things that you wouldn't normally be able to see with like, if you've got like a bunch of telescopes. They all collecting a little bit of data, and when you mesh that data and you interpolate, you get a bigger picture. You get a more detail. That's what this guy did. He basically did economic interferometry, saying, well, this money is going here and then it disappears, and that money is going there and then it disappears. So using that, he figured out what the shadow banking size of the economy was, and it's now, I believe it's now bigger than the global economy. Also because the global economy is completely fake and it's just weird paper money. But I believe the shadow banking economy is actually an economy that represents tangibles, that represents real things. Sam Wereb says, one wonders if they'd had their own cryptocurrency for decades and Bitcoin was stolen from them, like fire by Prometheus and released to us. No, no, no. You don't need cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is bullshit. Cryptocurrency is even more fake than the fake fiat money that we use. The cryptocurrency is vaporware. Yes, I know people make money in it. I get it. People make money with the other fiat money. And it's like, this is why I got out of like the trading game. When I left home when I was like 16 to go and study, and I came home, my parents were divorcing. I was like 19. I thought, I'm going to fucking leave here, or I'm going to end up like shooting my dad or something. So I left. And I left with my own money because I'd done a bit of investment in a company that was going public, and I'd made some money. And then I thought, well, there's an easy way to make money. And when I moved to Cape Town, I started to like play around with it. And then I realized, very quickly within like a few weeks, I sort of like, what? That's what these guys, that's how this works? It's a Ponzi scheme. It's an absolute fucking Ponzi scheme. It's unsustainable. It's going to collapse. So I got out of it. And also I got out of it because not just the fact that it was unsustainable, but it's like fake. It was just ethically, like, well, it seemed wrong to me. It was like, well, they say that you're investing in companies and you're trading on the shares, but you're not. You're trading on the betting of the idea that the shares might go up or down, and there's nobody on the other side of that bet, but you still make money of it, and it was just fuck. It's completely fake. I just didn't like it. Wasn't real. So, and I knew the whole money thing wasn't real because I knew that from before, but there was some sort of relationship to reality, I thought. Now I know that the quantitative easing, they're just printing money out of nowhere. They can literally print as much money as they want out of nowhere. And if they want you to be one of their boys, well, you get a couple of billion or billion. It doesn't matter. If I was like a sellout that like, hey, whatever, the guy who runs the Federal Reserve said, you know what, let's make that Florida guy rich. Yeah, fuck it. Let's give him a few million. I'd have millions in my bank tomorrow. I just have to sell my soul for it, so it ain't going to happen. But so anyway, the whole point is that you don't need cryptocurrency. It's cryptocurrency is just an idea. It's the idea on an idea. It's like a text message on your phone. I actually had Bitcoin and my phone died. If I could ever get that thing back, I'd probably be quite wealthy. I haven't even bothered. Tides of Truth said, hello. Oh, hello, Tides of Truth. There's an old name coming back. You were a precocious boy. Well, I don't think I was that precocious. I do have a high IQ or whatever. I'm smart. But, I've seen that with my son and with my daughter. It's like, it's a child's mind is naturally logical. They naturally look for reasonable answers to simple questions. And fiat money just doesn't make sense. The way that money works, once you figure out how it works, it's just an idea. It's just it's as if we all agreed that like, hey, you know what? Here's some toilet paper. Oh, with this, you can buy food for a week. Let's all agree. Let's all agree that one little sheet toilet paper, one little square, this is worth food for a week. Let's all agree, okay, guys? And everybody does. That's literally what money is right now. It's not tied to fucking anything. It's not even tied to gold. You could say, well, at least it's tied to a piece of metal that's in the world. Nope, tied to fuck all. So, yeah. Hello, Elia. Sam Werb says not stolen, copied, but well, yeah, you could call it cryptocurrency. You can call it fiat money. It's all the same. It's just air. I have your Face on Mars book. Great stuff. Neophyte 1. Thank you, sir. Feels like the world is ending. May not have much time to read books. Look, if the world is ending, you absolutely want the paper version of the books. You do. Because I don't think it's true that history repeats, but it certainly resonates. And what's coming next is the Great Depression of the 1920s and 30s, just before the wars, by the way. That is absolutely coming. I have been unclear about the timing. I've assumed that 2025 would be around there, either before or by the end of 2025. And I recently came across some information, which I'll share on the blog in the next day or two, that essentially says I'm right. And I think the guy who's figured this out knows a lot more than I do, because he's been in the financial game for a long time. And he's not motivated by money. And what he's put together really explains it. It basically gives all the details that I didn't need, because again, which brings me to another conversation I wanna put on the blog as well, which is Vox's unique high IQ and very high IQ. And like, we had a little thing on Social Galactic where Vox was like, I don't know if he got a bit upset or something with something I said, I don't remember. But he said like, oh, well, you're not unique high IQ, you're very high IQ, so you don't understand. And I'm like, no, buddy. So I went to read his definition of unique high IQ, and it was like, it's useful, like what Vox is a unique thinker, because he comes up with these like concepts that nobody else has come up with, which are useful to explain the world. And it is useful because there is a difference between a unique high IQ and a very high IQ. The thing is that I absolutely function in a unique high IQ way internally. That's how I function. I'm pattern recognition and sort of like I sense things. I can infer how something works a lot quicker than I can explain it to you. Just having a conversation with my wife about 3 days ago, and it's taken me 3 days to sort of like get little video. I came across randomly videos and some writing somewhere else, and I'm like, this is what I was trying to tell you. It's like, for me, it's so simple to sort of like A, B, C, but trying to explain it to somebody else that's why I started writing. That's why I wrote The Face on Mars. It was very difficult for me to write, because it was like, oh, this connects. But then I had to put it down in words so I could explain it to somebody else. And over the years, I've trained myself to do that, because when you do have a unique high IQ, which is, and again, guys, this is not about arrogance. It's not about me being so smart. It's got nothing to do with that. It's, in some ways, having the IQ that I have is kind of crippling. It's like a guy that's got, I don't know, 6 fingers or something. Kind of cool, but like kind of also ostracizes you quite a bit. Anyway, the thing is that if I try and explain, even now, if I try to explain to you guys how my brain works and how I connect the dots, most of you will have no fucking clue what I'm talking about. It'll just be like, this guy doesn't make sense, he's insane. And I won't even know the steps that I'm missing to make it make sense to you. So it's difficult. So what I've learned to do is to present the stuff in a way that does make sense to most people, which comes across as very high IQ, because it comes across as, and this is why step 1, and this is why step 2, and this is why step 3. And if you read my Reclaiming the Catholic Church, or you read my blog about Catholicism, it's like, oh, this guy's a zealot. Yes, this guy's a zealot because he puts things in front of you in a way that you can't deny. Why? So that you can test it and check it. And that's why in The Face on Mars, I've got all this stuff about the technology and the information of how this thing was figured out, the proof of it, who invented, who originally discovered anti-gravity technology or rediscovered it because it was here before, what happened on Mars, the astronomy on Mars, the geology on Mars, the astronomical data that we have on Mars. All the stuff connects like an engineer, because again, I am a scientist at heart, always was, and I studied engineering. So engineering is the only real science. So theories are one thing. When you can build it and it works, then it's science. And I present that information that way. So the whole point of the face on Mars is like nobody else has come up. It's 30 years gone by. Graham Hancock plagiarized one of the main concepts in the book, and he still doesn't get it. And he admitted he plagiarized it in front of me and with a witness. So it's 30 years later, and nobody can still kind of wrap their head around what really happened on this planet, where we're from, what the technology is, etc., etc., etc. Now, the Nazis did discover this stuff, and they created a bunch of weapons, and not just anti-gravity stuff. Keep in mind, do you know what the Foo Fighters are? It's not just a band. Foo Fighters were actually what the pilots, the Allied pilots, American pilots, called these balls that would just float up into the sky. Nobody knew how they flew, and they would like go through some of the planes. So some of the Allied bombers that were going over Germany would get attacked by these like floating balls of steel, glowing balls of steel that would just like move around and apparently fuck up the instruments of the plane, or go through one of their wings and blow up their plane. And no one still knows what the fuck that is, how that works. They had something else. They had these like flying mines that would just like float up and attach themselves to the wings of the plane and then blow up. That's where the fuel is carried in planes, so the whole plane would end blowing up. What were they? No one knows. I've got documents which are, they might be downstairs, or they might be in that drawer down there. But anyway, I spent a bunch of time when I was in London at the British Library, and I dug out all these since declassified top secret papers about Nazi technology in the submarines, because the submarines of the Nazis could go months underwater without like coming up. Nobody, like, how were they powered? They were powered, the whole fucking submarine was powered with like some electromagnetic things that produced a shitload of energy. And when I was in England, I'd actually got accepted to do a master's degree in electromechanical engineering to rebuild one of these free energy devices. And I got accepted into it, and then I broke my Achilles tendon, so that fucked out. And then I ran out of money because by the time the Achilles tendon was fixed, I wasn't working. I got married. I went to Brazil, blew a bunch of money on that. So pussy stopped anti-gravity machines. That's what happens to people like me. So, and they were there. That's how they power their like submarines. So this stuff is absolutely real. It's not nonsensical. And their submarines eventually became UFOs. And you guys probably don't know this, but the Roswell incident. There was guys. It was in the newspapers. There was an article that I read when I wrote The Face on Mars about or thereabouts. I can't remember, just shortly before, shortly after. It was actually in the newspapers. The guy had like a little dial of some magnetometer with like a needle and everything on it, and on the plaque that was under it had the swastika. It was a Nazi little piece of like one of the supposed UFOs that had aliens in it. And the guy in the newspaper was saying, well, yeah, they are fucking aliens because they're not Americans, but they're not like off this planet. They're Nazis. That was Nazi stuff that happened there. And again, I cover this in a lot more detail, both in The Face on Mars, nonfiction, and in Nazi Moon, fiction, but with a lot of nonfiction. In Nazi Moon, in the first book especially, I've got historical data that's actually factual data. And then I've got and it's actually, because the main guy is like kind of reading the stuff. So it's just like historical data, it's him doing research. And then there's like restricted data. Now, the restricted data is not historical, and I can't necessarily prove it 100%, but it's my best guess on how things actually really work. So it'll give you a sense of things. Anyway, so let me just the Canaries. That yes, thank you, Tides of Truth. The Canary Islands is where they had like some of the Nazi secret bases. Tides of Truth says, since money can be printed at will, is there really any? There is, because when you print money like willy nilly, like it's what Zimbabwe did. You know, in Zimbabwe you could a bit of rural internet there, got a little jump. So in Zimbabwe, you needed like 1 billion Zimbabwean dollars to buy a loaf of bread. When you're just printing money for nothing, eventually your printed money becomes less valuable than this, because this you can actually use to wipe your ass. While money, you know, the texture's not really right for cleaning your butthole. It'll cut you, you know, it's not really absorbent. So what happens is that you get super inflation, and then you get hyperinflation, and then you need a wheelbarrow of money. And this is what happened in Weimar Germany. See, so if you study history, the depression of the 30s, the collapse of the 30s, 20s and 30s, and what happened in Weimar Germany. In Weimar Germany, the time it took you to go to the shop with your wheelbarrow of money, by the time you got to the shop, you needed 2 wheelbarrows. And I'm not kidding. There was like, people were wallpapering their house with bills, with money, because it was cheaper than trying to buy the actual wallpaper. I'm not kidding. This really happened in Weimar Germany. And that's what happens when you just print money, 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 and eventually it just becomes, it's not worth anything. So, you know what's interesting about gold? If you take gold from 2,000 years ago, 1 ounce of gold 2,000 years ago, and you take an ounce of gold today, at the same value, essentially the same value. Now you can say, oh, but that's not true, because gold went to $2,000 and it was only, and it's true, you know, like I remember I bought like a gold coin for when my daughter was born, and it was like 900 pounds or something. Now it's nearly 2,000 pounds. But that's not the point, because the paper money doesn't worth shit. What can you do with 900 pounds back then, or nearly 2,000 pounds now, is the same what you could do with an ounce of gold 2,000 years ago. So, you know, 2 grand, what would that buy you now with $2 grand or whatever? Probably buy a nice suit, pair of shoes, a decent suit, you know, not a super expensive, like really tailor-made one, but it would buy a nice suit, nice pair of shoes, maybe a briefcase, depending on, you know, how you split the money and what kind of gun. Little gun, you know, $200-300 gun, $500 gun, $500 gun, okay suit, decent pair of shoes, and a little briefcase, right? That's what you can do with $2,000, yeah, more or less. Well, what do you think you could do with an ounce of gold back then? Buy yourself a really nice toga, a good gladius, you know, sword, nice sandals, maybe a shield, bit of armor. Same shit. Gold doesn't lose its money. That's why its value. It might if the off-planet guys decide to mine gold and then they like flood the market, but they haven't done that yet, and they're not going to for a long time on Earth, because they're doing the opposite. They're hoarding the gold, and they're hoarding gold, I believe, for other reasons. Now this goes into a way big loop, right? What I'm going to say next is going to sound like woo-woo shit, but keep in mind, unique high IQ. I come up with crazy theories that then in time ends up being right. The Anunnaki thing, there's a South African guy who's figured out the so-called Anunnaki, or the gods, ancient gods, because if you go to the Egyptian king lists, they're divided into like gods, demigods, humans. And that's how people divide that. But the king lists is one list. It's not like split. The Egyptians didn't split it. The interesting thing is that really ancient gods used to live like 40,000 years. Then the demigods are living like a few thousand years. And you know, you'll find people like Gilgamesh and Nimrod and all these guys were like kind of in there somewhere. You know, it's like, wait, what? Hercules? Who do you think Hercules was? And Gilgamesh? Who do you think Gilgamesh and Hercules? Gene Wolfe, in his Soldier of the Mist, put it best. There are not so many gods as you think there are. They just have a lot of different names, but they're the same gods. Apparently, these Anunnaki guys were mining gold. And they have left these like circles all over Africa to the point where a guy has actually managed to count them. And they've been there since the 1800s. People have started counting this shit in the 1800s. There's some South African guys on YouTube who's like done an even more modern version of counting them up. And he's like, wait a fucking minute. They're saying that these things used to be like to hold cattle, but it's built out of stones and stuff. And it's like, well, if that were the case, we would have had to have had like, and he figured it out, so many millions of cattle and people. There weren't that many people on the planet. So something else was going on. And again, in the myths, it's like they were getting gold for some reason. They needed gold for some fucking thing or other. Now, gold has got some very unique properties. See this? That's a gold ring. Gold has some unique properties. The reason it's so like kind of shiny, but it also doesn't lose it, is because the electron cloud around it has got a very particular, that's why it's a noble metal. It doesn't rust, it doesn't corrode. It's got a bunch of qualities to it. So who knows what you might need it for. And the powers that be have hoarded gold. I mean, keep in mind that an American president just said you're not allowed to own gold. You have to give it up to the Federal Reserve now, which is a private company. It's, you know. So no, there is no limit on what the governments can print until it becomes obvious that it's just paper, which we're about there. We're nearly there. Sam Webb says, I should have said the cryptographic blockchain instead of Bitcoin. No, it doesn't need a blockchain. People are just agreeing all over the world that this is money. It's money. Yeah. We put it in the bank and we make it really cool. You have to wear a tie to like talk about this shit and trade it. Oh, you need to be special. You need to have gone to special school to do that shit. Then we mix it all together and we collapse the whole economy and people lose their houses and shit. But we don't, because, hey, we're special. Yeah, it's complete nonsense. Tides of Truth says, recognizing that someone has a gift I do not, such as unique high IQ, doesn't bother me. I am grateful to have such friends or acquaintances. We should all be overjoyed to have gifted people in our tribe. Yeah, I've met people that are smarter than me. I've talked to them on a regular basis at times. I get excited if I meet a guy that's smarter than me and knows a bunch of shit, because invariably I can learn from them. So, you know, I've got no issue with that. And sometimes little kids will surprise you, because little kids, again, because they're logical, I often will have conversations with children, because I'll ask them, what do you think about this? Not as in, oh, I'm going to tell you this, but I'll ask them, like, what do you think about this? And sometimes they come up with ideas that are like, fuck, I never thought about that, because they're you know, they don't have preconceived ideas. So they're just like, they've got a different take on things. It's really quite interesting. Okay, says, was there a planet between Earth and Mars? I think what you're talking about is between Mars and Jupiter. That's where the asteroid belt is. I read a thing about that a while back. Well, that's in the face of Mars as well. The Phaeton object. Phaeton was, of course, from Greek mythology, the guy who like went a bit, you know, took his father's chariot that was getting the sun across the sky. Look, honestly, do yourself a favor. If you guys are interested in astronomy or even science fiction, because the actual story of what happened on Mars, you know what they say, the truth is stranger than fiction. It really is. And I'm sure I'm correct that the evidence of it is overwhelming. So, Tides of Truth, your torn Achilles tendon probably saved your life. They would have tried to stop you. Maybe, yeah. You know, it's like the guy whose son falls off a horse and breaks his leg, right? The old man, and they say, "Oh, you're so lucky, your son broke his leg," and he's like, "Yeah, maybe." And the army comes and they're like enrolling all the young men to go and fight the war, but they can't enroll his son because he's got a broken leg, he's got a cast. So, oh, you're so lucky. He goes, maybe. It's a long story. It goes on like this. You know, bad things happen, good things happen, and everybody in the village is like, "Oh, that's good. Oh, you're so lucky. Oh, you're so unlucky. Oh, you're so lucky." And the old man is always like, maybe, because you don't know. Woolly Ram says, why is the shadow economy linked to the visible economy? Well, because it is. You can't have a bunch of resources appear or disappear from a closed system, which is Earth, without noticing it. It's like I said, it's interferometry, it's economic interferometry. It would be like when I was doing the finances for building sites. I know what the budget is, I know what the global economy is, right, for that building. I know what the costs are because we've got contracts in place. Big banks have all got, contracts in place. You add it all up and you get to a total. And well, if suddenly you're missing 30 grand or 300 grand, or you got 30 grand extra, or you got 300 grand extra, you know about it. You might not know how it went missing. You might not know in whose pockets it's gone. You might not know how it happened, but it happened. You can tell it happened. Okay, says Neptune, Poseidon, same thing. No, it's not. No, no, not Neptune, not Poseidon. Ah. Jupiter and Mars. Okay, you got Earth. I mean, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter. Now, between Jupiter and Mars, there's an asteroid belt there. It does make a difference. Oli Ram says, gotta solve some personal issues before I can buy anything online. Get to it, my boy. You know how it is. So, anyway, all of this to get back to, did the Nazis have a base in Antarctica? I believe they absolutely did. Not only that, I believe they kicked the Americans' ass in Operation Highjump, which started in 1946, was supposed to last 8 months, and after about 6 weeks, they came back with a tail between their legs. They lost men, they lost equipment, they lost planes, they lost tanks. There was over 5,000 soldiers, American soldiers, that went to Antarctica just after the close of the war, when, what the fuck? No one has any money. There's, all sorts of like hardships. And now, we're going to send a bunch of soldiers with tanks and planes and warships to Antarctica to do a geographical survey. Right. And they come back after 6 weeks instead of, the 8 months they were supposed to be there, with a bunch of men dead. It's still classified. A lot of men were lost, and equipment was lost. And Admiral Byrd was in charge of this expedition, and Admiral Byrd was the foremost polar explorer at the time. And there's some video on YouTube that you can find of him being interviewed after he did his, before he went off to Operation Highjump. And they interviewed him. And this guy's a no-nonsense guy. You can see he was like, 1940s, like 1930s, hardcore military guy, just straight arrow. And they put him in charge of this thing. And then after he came back, they banned all his diaries were like taken. They're still under lock and key. They're still top secret. Nobody has been able to see them. And they put him in a mental institution. They wouldn't let him fucking talk to anybody, because he was interviewed on El Mercurio, a newspaper, on the way back by a Argentinian, I think it was, newspaper. And he said, we must be prepared for aircraft of polar origin coming to, fight us. And they can move at speeds that we can't match, that we can't do anything about it. So they went to dig the Nazis out of Antarctica in their secret base. The Nazis had already built a few UFOs, or, Hanebu machines, flying machines, with lasers on them, because the Nazis invented lasers and the atom bomb before the Americans. The first atom bomb was actually set off in 1944 by the Nazis on and off a little island. There was an Italian major, I can't remember if it was a major or something, possibly even a general. There was a witness. There was German airmen that was witnesses, and these guys did full reports after the war, which was classified and then now being declassified. The first atom bomb was set off in 1944, and it knocked out all the fucking power in Berlin. Auschwitz, which was supposed to be a slave camp to produce Buna rubber, never produced a single kilo of Buna rubber. Auschwitz used more electricity than Berlin every day. And it had like huge water tanks and so on. Why? When the British got a bunch of German officers, POWs, and they kept them in this house, which was super bugged and super wired for sound. So they recorded everything that the German officers were talking to each other, and the snippets of conversation between officers, because the Germans weren't stupid, they knew they'd probably be recorded. And they were kept under, officer conditions, so in a nice big house off in the country. But they were recording everything these guys were saying. And there are conversations that refer to the cyclotronic machinery that you need to create enriched uranium. And they were using lasers to do this. So they had lasers. Now, how do we know this has happened? Because Manhattan Project, you look at how much enriched uranium did the Manhattan Project produce, because supposedly the Manhattan Project is where they built the first atom bomb. Enola Gay and, Little Boy, which was the names of one of the pilots. His mother was called Enola Gay, and he was Little Boy, the two bombs that they dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So supposedly those bombs were built with the enriched uranium that the Americans built from the Manhattan Project, except they didn't, because the Manhattan Project did not produce enough enriched uranium. And in fact, the enriched uranium that they got was delivered by the Germans in U-boat 235, if I remember correct, which was a U-boat that was stopped about 3 or 4 times from Germany. It was stopped in the Channel by the British, by the Belgians, I think. It was stopped 3 or 4 times, and they were told, let them go, let them carry through. They were stopped in America as well. They delivered, I think it was 88 containers, gold-lined containers that had enriched uranium in it, and it was a deal. It was a deal to allow Bormann and possibly Hitler and Eva Braun to get out of Germany and escape, or at least, have their huge country-sized SS-only entry in Argentina. In Argentina, there was a huge area. I don't want to lie to you, but it was tens of thousands of hectares. So it was like a little country inside Argentina. You could get there inside there only if you had, they. What do you mean still looking forward to book 3 of the Overlords of Mars? The whole series is out in one book. It's called Nazi Moon. And on the chat, I put the link to the ebook, or go on Amazon and just type in Nazi Moon and my surname, and you'll find it. It's not just the 3rd book; it's all books together. It's like the trilogy in one. The 3rd book will eventually come out on its own, but the whole thing in one is it. So what was I saying? This submarine with the enriched uranium was delivered to the Americans, and the Americans basically left the Nazis alone in Argentina and South America. We know for a fact that what was it called? The Angel of Death, Josef Mengele, was doing his experiments in Brazil. There's a city. All the stuff is, by the way, Nazi Moon has got this stuff. This historical data, it's in there. The Germans had achieved a way of making sure that when women got pregnant, they had like twins or triplets or whatever. And there's a whole breeding program that the Nazis had started in the 30s. I'm not making this up. This is real history. They wanted to build battalions of hardcore Aryan, blue-eyed, blonde-haired little boys that became men. And they were part of the breeding program. They basically took a bunch of Ukrainian and Slav women that were all blonde, hot-looking, blue-eyed, and they were made to breed. I think semi-voluntarily, pretty much, but they had to be bred by, I think it was Aryan Nazi officers that had to prove to the 4th generation that they were proper Aryans. Last check quite a while ago. Yeah, if you go on the blog, Rich0292, if you go on the blog, and there's a whole little Overlords of Mars now on the left side. Click on there, and or just go to books I wrote, and it's in there. Anyway, so they had like they were building battalions of hardcore, proper Nazis that were going to be raised through the Nazi youth and all that. And this was before the war even started. Um, anyway, they delivered these enriched uranium, which was enough. If you look at the production of uranium in like the Manhattan Project, it's sort of like, boop! Oh, now we've got enough to do the bombs. And then that's when they bombed Japan. Carlos de Bariloche is a town in Argentina that was like full Nazi. I mean, there were like German schools, full-on Nazi swastikas, pictures of Hitler on the walls and the restaurants. And a lot of the Nazis that escaped to South America had plastic surgery there. There was a plastic surgeon that did their faces. Again, all this stuff, this is not fiction. This is all real shit, all right? And you're telling me they didn't have a base in fucking Antarctica? Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Yes, they absolutely did. In fact, I even think I know where it is. There's a chain of mountains in Antarctica that you're still not allowed to go to because they're protecting birds. Antarctic birds, and you can't go anywhere near that mountain. That whole mountain range is just off limits because there might be some birds there. I'm pretty sure that's where they were. So, oh, sorry, there's guys talking. Sorry, let me just quickly catch up with the chat and I'll carry on. Okay, says, haha, I was referring to gigs having different names, not the planets. Oh, gigs? I'm not sure what that means. Gods. Oh, gods having different. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Okay. Good. You make me feel better. Tides of Truth says, why did the Germans lose the conventional war despite their tech advantage? Because it was right at the end of I mean, Germany was fighting the whole world. They were fighting Russia, which had millions of guys who were just throwing people in. They were fighting the UK. They were fighting America, which had endless money, basically. They were fighting the whole planet. And they nearly fucking held them off. And yes, they did get the high-tech stuff, but right only at the end. Keep in mind that we have jet engines. We have jets because of the Second World War, because of the Germans. The Germans invented the jet engine. The first jet engines that, like, when the pilots, Allied pilots, first came across the German jet engines, they were like, what the fuck? This thing is flying 2 or 3 times the speed that we are, like, it can do things we can't do and kicking our ass. The problem was that the first jet engines could only stay in the air for, like, I don't know, a few minutes before they ran out of fuel. So, and yes, they had anti-gravity tech, but they shipped that anti-gravity tech to Antarctica, most likely, and then possibly to Carlos de Bariloche, a little bit of it or whatever. And they kept it in Antarctica because it was like, now, fuck it, we'll give them the enriched uranium, let them have the atom bombs. As long as we can build a couple of these things, we'll be free. Now, did the Americans ever get the Nazis out of Antarctica? I don't think so. Because they got their ass kicked in Operation Highjump, which was in 1947. And then guess what? There was another weird little operation called Operation Argus. Operation Argus was in the 50s. I don't want to lie to you, I think it was 1958. I might be wrong, it might have been 1954. But there's something else happened in 1954. In 1954, Thomas Townsend Brown, the guy who rediscovered the anti-gravity principles in 1928, and then he tried to finance it privately. Thomas Townsend Brown had discs flying, okay? And they were flying better in vacuum than they did in atmosphere. He tried to get some private financing. The private financier that was financing him died in a plane crash. Unlucky. And so Thomas Townsend Brown said, fuck it, I don't want to die in a plane crash, so I'm just going to go to the U.S., the U.S. Naval Research Laboratories, and hey guys, I got anti-gravity. That was in 1954. And since then, no one's heard about anti-gravity ever again. But in 1958, I believe it was 1958, I might be speaking wrong, Project Argus happened. What was Project Argus? Well, Project Argus was another, climate change mission to Antarctica. Yes, where they blew up 3 atom bombs in Antarctica to check out what would happen. Because as you do, right? No. I think they went there to bomb the crap out of the fucking Nazis. But if the Nazis did have anti-G machines, and if they had been developing them for 10 years, since 46, 47, I don't think their atom bombs would have helped that much. Maybe they did, and they wiped out the Nazis. Maybe they didn't. Keep in mind, there's a book called Somebody Else is on the Moon, written in the 70s. No, sorry, I lie, in the early 60s, by a guy called, sorry, I don't know, It's in the Face on Mars, I don't remember, 30 years ago. There are big machineries that were observed with telescopes on the moon, building shit on the moon. Before we theoretically went there in 1969, theoretically with rockets, because I do believe we did go to the moon. I do not believe we went there with rockets, because Van Allen belts. Van Allen belts would fry the shit out of you, but not if you have a little anti-gravity machine, which if you've been developing anti-gravity machines since the 1954, when Thomas Townsend Brown gave it to the US Naval Research Laboratories, well, then you can have a little anti-gravity machine inside the LEM, because the LEM, if you do all the calculations and you check how much fuel they had, theoretically the LEM could take off from the moon, except when you look at a little video of it flying up, it just floats up. Explosive bolts, there's no rocket, doesn't move the dust, nothing. So it just floats up. And if you did have an anti-gravity machine inside the LEM, well, you could create a shielding that will let you go through the Van Allen belts without frying your brain. So that's how they went to the moon. But maybe there was already somebody there. Because, again, if the Nazis have been building shit since the 47, why wouldn't they go to the moon and build bases there where nobody can touch them? And now you understand some of the principles of Nazi Moon. I haven't given you any spoilers because this shit comes up pretty quick in the first book. But, you know, the story and how it develops, whole other thing. So their tech advantage, to answer your question, Tides of Truth, was right at the end of the war. They didn't have the manpower, they didn't have, they needed time, which they didn't have anymore. Wooly Ram says, reminds me of an old game, Red Alert. Oh yeah, that was a pretty cool game. Einstein invents a time machine, kills Hitler, and World War II is against an ascendant Soviet Union with super weapons. Yeah, well, Einstein was a plagiarist, an incestuous pervert, sex pervert. So I don't put any stock in Einstein. I used to think he was a cool guy when I was 16. Then I find out what he did. He didn't come up with anything original. He stole all the information was in papers from the late 1800s. And if you're interested in that, go to haroldaspen.org. It's maintained by a very good friend of mine. And it's got all of Harold Aspen's books on there. One of his books is called Physics Without Einstein. Very interesting book. And Harold Aspen was a gentleman and a scholar. So, and his wife was a true British rose, a true British lady. Woolly Ram says there was so much more alternate history fiction back in my day, or at least it seemed so. There was, absolutely there was. And you're younger than I am. There was a lot more of it in my day. Woolly Ram, Command and Conquer. Yes, Command and Conquer was another one. Tide of Truth. We have a lot of UFO activity where I live. Odd stuff. Friend recently saw 400-meter diameter craft, circular. Yeah. The guy I was telling you about on YouTube, and I forget his name, and I didn't note it down, it was some years ago. He's a guy with a giant telescope that basically looks at spaceships and goes, oh, there's one, and he calculates the size of it and goes, yeah, that's about 300 meters big, and that's about 400 meters big, which ties in perfectly with what that McKinnock guy, the autistic British guy who broke into the Pentagon and got this list of basically spaceships with up to 300 people on them. So, yeah. Again, Nazi Moon has got big spaceships with up to 300 people or even more in them. Look, I'm not trying to just sell you the book, because I would, don't get me wrong, I'd love it if you guys spread this all over the place and I become wealthy enough from my books. I don't need to be rich, just enough that I can buy a little tractor and survive just writing books. I would love that. As of today, the amount of books I sell every month allows me to do maybe like one shop. Not a big shop, just like one shop where I go with my daughter and or my wife and say, okay, let's just buy some things for the next few days. That's it. So I would love it for you guys to buy me a shitload of books. Buy them by the pallet load. Don't get me wrong. I've got nothing against saying, oh, no, I'm not trying to sell you books. I'm not. I mean, but please go ahead and buy them. But when I say please, just read The Face on Mars or read Nazi Moon. It's not about the money for me. I didn't spend 30 years putting all this shit together because it wouldn't have taken me 30 years if I had like free time to do it, you know. And again, I've got a bunch of other books in my head that I would really like to get out there, but you know, I have to work and chop wood. It's winter again, so I'm spending the day chopping wood today. If you guys buy a bunch of books, great, that'd be great. But I'm not trying to, I'm not, you know, hey, buy my book, it's so great. That's not the point here. The point here is the information in those books. It honestly does change your life. It changes the way you see the world. And the way you see the world matters. It matters because if enough people, there is this principle of coherence. And it's the same whether it's in human beings, living beings, dead beings, so-called objective matter. It's the principle of lasers. Once 1,000th, about 1,000th of anything resonates at a certain frequency, that's when you get coherent light. So what happens in lasers, you bounce back and forth the same, you know, electrons and photons and whatever. You bounce them back and forth between two mirrors until about 1,000th of the particle are all going at the same frequency. When that happens, it's a tipping point and they automatically get all the other ones to do the same. And that light becomes coherent and becomes thousands of times stronger. And that's why it can burn through steel. It's the same thing with people. If we get 1,000th of the people on Earth to understand about anti-gravity machine, to understand about all this technology, boom, it'll explode. Now, will it explode in a way that'll fucking wipe us out? I hope not. And I believe not, because, again, taking a step further, if anti-gravity is a thing, which it is, if civilizations exist that are older than ours, and again, what happened on Mars proves there have been. You know, if they're all dead, well, really? But there's something else. What happened on Mars and what happened in the solar system proves that these civilizations do not originate in the solar system. And if the civilizations that have anti-gravity machines do not originate in the solar system, means they originate somewhere else. Now, if they're alive and living, and maybe there's more than one or two of them, and we know there's more than one or two of them, because what happened on Mars proves that they fucking had a big fight. In fact, what happened between Mars and Jupiter proves it as well. And a little bit what happened on Earth, because the gods are always fighting, remember? Why do you think that is? Well, so let's just posit this hypothetical, that in this galaxy we have a number of civilizations that have achieved anti-gravity technology. What do you think they're all going to do? Fling rocks at each other? No. Because anyone, just remember, one person with an anti-gravity machine can reduce any planet to a fucking slag heap in a matter of hours, if not minutes, okay? Because I'm thinking the slow way around. You take a big asteroid, you redirect it with your gravity waves so it hits the planet. It takes hours, maybe days, depending on how far the thing is, because you can accelerate it, right? You don't just like change direction. You also sit in front of it and pull it with you until right the end. But that's just one possibility. What if you used an anti-gravity machine to create wormholes? And what if you create a wormhole inside the center of a planet? And then you hyperspace some shit in there. That would make a big difference, right? And there's theoretical other things you could do, like hyperspace into the center of a star or something, and then you get the whole star to blow up. So now you get a whole fucking system wiped out, not just a planet. Now, if everybody's got that technology and one of them says, you know what? I don't like the Zeta Reticulans. I'm going to blow up their solar system. Boom. Well, guess what all the other intelligent races are going to do? Oh, those fuckers blow up solar systems. Guys, we're all going to hold hands and kill them. Make sure they're all wiped out. And that will have happened here and there. And so then what happens? Well, Cold War. Now we have a Cold War. Technological Cold War on anti-gravity machines, because if you don't have the Cold War, you know, that's what happens. So you would have a Cold War. And what does that mean? It means that when another civilization starts to get to the technological level where they're going to have anti-gravity machine, guess what? There's going to be an observation point. They're going to be like, oh, right, let's see what these fuckers are doing. unless they wipe them all out straight away. But I think there's some alien races that have got to that point. They'll be like, no, we gotta kind of be nice. But they will be here. They'll be here influencing shit. They would be here saying, no, dudes, take it easy. You can't just, anti-gravity machines, let's give them to everybody. No. That's not how it works. We gotta do this by steps. So the alien people would be interfering with humanity. And this is a concept that's also in Nazi meme. So again, I didn't give you any spoilers because this general preamble is like in the first 30 pages of the first book. So okay. Willie Ram says, yeah, Command and Conquer, Red Alert. Yeah, that was I played that very briefly for a little bit. That they had like Tesla coils and cool things. Wooly loved that game. Wooly Ram, is there any connection to Lovecraft's story at the Mountains of Madness? Oh, I read that long ago. I don't remember it much, but there is absolutely a connection between the Giza Plateau, advanced technology, and scalar weapons. Scalar weapons is a concept that Thomas Bearden, Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Bearden, retired ex-army. He died not too long ago. I bought a bunch of his books just before or just after he passed away. He was in his 90s. I spoke to him on the phone about 30 years ago. I was trying to finance the stuff that he was researching with by using the money of these so-called Orthodox Jews that were scamming everybody. They were running a Ponzi scheme, and they ripped off most of their own people. So these so-called Orthodox Jews ripped off a bunch of other Jews and then ran off to Israel with like 65 million. And I'd worked briefly for them as a bodyguard. And then they asked me to go and work for them when they were in Europe, in France. And I saw how they behaved, and I was like, nah, fuck it, I'm out. They were paying good money at the time, but I was like, nah, I'm out. I don't want to know what you guys do, and I don't give a shit. But I'm not gonna be your bodyguard. Fuck you. You can catch your own bullets. And shortly after that, they were on all front page newspapers because they ran off to Israel and stolen a bunch of money from other Jews, by the way. So, and but they wanted to. They said they were gonna finance any business I'd come up with. Blah blah blah. And I thought, fuck it, why not? I'll use these people's money. They're assholes. I don't care. But if they finance this guy to like build his like over unity devices, his research is interesting. It's worth like supporting. He's written a bunch of books. They're not easy reading. But one thing I do say about Thomas Bearden is that years ago, I still have those files somewhere, text files about how electricity actually works. And I remember in school, like all of you, reading about, electrons and, potential energy and kinetic energy. And it didn't make any fucking sense. Again, like a little kid, I'm like, wait, how can this fucking be both a potential and a kinetic? No, that doesn't work. And reading Thomas Bearden's explanation of how electricity works, I was like, oh, fuck, that makes sense. And he actually wrote in the text, like, if the reader has been following what I'm saying, about now they should be having a light bulb moment going, oh, now is the first time I understand how electricity works. So, scalar weapons are, I'm going to explain it in layman's terms. This is kind of a bad explanation, but the analogy works. Basically, it's like I've got a giant battery here, or a giant energy creating thing, like a pyramid, and I'm going to shoot a whole bunch of energy, which I get from the 0-point vacuum fluctuation. So all this energy that's all over around us, which we know is real, is a thing. I'm going to create this giant machine that gets all this energy and fucking pumps it all into this hyperspatial ether dimension. You can think of it as tachyons, but I don't believe tachyons actually exist. The ether does exist. And this energy like travels through this ether, and you can, with a special machine like a pyramid, you could possibly decide where this energy pops out. So it travels through vacuum, space, other planets, kind of like neutrinos. Nobody knows, this stuff just going through you, but then it pops out all at once in one specific point. Now, what if you did a scalar weapon that popped all that energy out in the center of a sun? Then you'd get the sun blow up, then you'd get the whole system blowing up. And guess what? That shit might actually be happening because suns that blow up out of the blue are not very common. In fact, you can figure out from the spectral class of a star how often or not often these things should blow up, more or less. You know, you get a ballpark figure. Sort of like, well, that sun should last another 15 billion years or whatever. And that is pretty accurate, except that you get what is known in astronomy as champagne supernovas. Champagne supernovas are basically, why champagne? Because like the cork pops. So out of the blue, with no indication that it should do any of this, all of a sudden, some stars just go pop! Supernova. Like, wait, what? But that was a normal G-class star. What the fuck happened? And there's quite a few of them popping off, and nobody knows why. Nobody can explain, no models of physics that we have about stars. And I agree that science is quite far behind knowing everything by quite a bit. But stars are sort of, almost quite well understood, kinda, technically, a little bit. And nobody can explain how these champagne supernovas are happening. Unless you've got an intelligence behind it that's making them pop. So maybe there's an intergalactic war going on of pretty massive proportions. And I hope to fuck they don't blow up our sun because, well, that'll be the end of the whole solar system, not just us. So, yeah. Okay, says Sneaky, I remember McKinnon, whatever his name was. Yeah, McKinnon, they couldn't extradite him. Yeah, they couldn't, thank God. Right, from what I remember, they wouldn't give him up. Yeah, they didn't. I might be wrong, something like that. Yeah, no, that's correct. That's exactly right. I read a very interesting sci-fi book. Well, I liked it. That reminds me of your theory about the wormhole war, etc. Forever War, Haldeman. Yeah, Joe Haldeman. It's a very old book. He wrote that in the 60s, and he was a Vietnam vet, and he basically wrote a science fiction book essentially based on the Vietnam War. And then, of course, that little gamma freak little peasant, you know, a little bundle of sticks called, what's his name? The guy who wrote, he basically copied Joe Haldeman's Forever War and he called it Old Man's War. And he basically just ripped off his book, Scalzi, John Scalzi, that little gamma freak. And that's how he made his like money as a writer or whatever. He just ripped off other people and then redid it. He's a shit writer. I've never read anything that he wrote. I picked up, what was that book he wrote about the Star Trek guys with the red uniform that just get killed all the time? Red Shirts, I think it's called. I didn't know who John Scalzi was at the time. I picked it up in the library and I just thought, just sensed it. And I was like, no, this is shit. Put it down. And I didn't know who John Scalzi was at the time. Yeah. Richo292 says, I notice it says Omnibus. Will there be other books in the Overlord series? Kinda. These 3 books are the trilogy that relates to the Overlords of Mars. There are going to be more books. They're not going to take 10 years, I promise you. And I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm not going to tell you what the next books, at least one for sure, because that was always planned, that there was always a 4th book. But it might actually end up being another trilogy. And I don't want to spoil for you, so I'm not going to tell you what it's about, how it connects to this one. You're just going to have to read the first 3 books before you get told that. But yeah, now these first 3 books have been in my head since the mid-90s at the latest, early 90s. They've been in my head for literally almost 30 years. The next 3 books, not so much. The 4th book, I always knew I was going to write, but it was going to be almost like a separate sort of thing. And if you want to get a little bit of a flavor for it, you can also read, which you can also get as an ebook at the link there. I don't know if I have it here. Do I? I might have. Just, no, I think I put it back. It's called Confederate Rising. And it's a little novella which I did for like a bunch of friends. And it's set in the same universe, if you like, but 400 years in the future. So it gives a little bit of a flavor. But in a way, it's almost a little bit of a spoiler for like some of the things. So you might want to hold off reading that, at least until you've finished Nazi Moon. So let's put it this way. This trilogy, the Nazi Moon trilogy, it's sort of think of it as a series in TV or something, right? It's like season one. It ends, it has an ending, and it's kind of like it's an ending that clearly can have a follow on, but it can also wrap things up to a certain point. So that's how it is. Woolly Ram says harp, blast over Turkey weather in the Mediterranean changes, dry winter, gas operations not halted by winter rain. Is my tinfoil hat coming loose? No, it's not. We've had hail here in July, unheard of. Yes, HARP absolutely exists. They can create whatever weather they want. They can create whatever earthquake they want. Yeah, it's all real. And again, if you read Nazi Moon, now the thing about it's difficult to get this across, but I promise you guys, all the concept in Nazi Moon were in my head at the latest 1995. Okay, so 28 years ago. But a lot of the concepts were before that, because 95 is when I finished The Face on Mars. All the stuff that's in The Face on Mars, obviously I thought about it and researched before. So I promise you, I did not add things in the trilogy that is Nazi Moon. There's no concept, there's no technology in Nazi Moon that I didn't already have in my head in the 1990s. I did not add anything. I did not sort of go like, oh, right, I'm now in the year 2011. Oh, all this other stuff's happened. I'm going to put that in the book. It was all there. It was all there in the 90s. The stuff that I'm going to write now is, it's not going to do that either. It's just going to take what happened in the technology of the Nazi Moon trilogy and take the next logical steps towards, wherever that's going. So okay, says that's interesting. Never knew that. Okay, I don't know what you're referring to because I'm saying a lot of information. But has anyone here punished them? Oh, you're talking about probably Joe Haldeman. Woolly Ram says, has anyone here punished themselves with the name of the wind? It's so spectacularly awful. Oh, that name rings a distant, ugly bell. What was the worst movie I've seen as a close run was what's it, the Witcher Project? Is it that what it's called? That shitty film that was just like all on like a video camera. That, and a close second was Black Swan with Natalie Portman. Absolute shit. I even wrote a review of like Black Swan, and I don't on the blog. So if you go on the search me and you do like Black Swan research, it's quite a funny little review. But yeah, the worst film I've ever seen, I think, is probably the what's it called? The Blair Witch Project. Sorry, I'm confusing Witcher. That Witcher is a pretty cool little series. The Blair Witch Project. That was absolute shit. Complete fucking useless. Okay says cloud seeding seems to be the newer weather tech. HARP has been around for a while. No, it's not cloud seeding. What they're doing with those chemtrails is not for clouds. They're like basically fucking poisoning the shit out of us. And I believe that they're doing that to do with the 5G stuff, because you've got a bunch of people. Again, this was out in 95. There's a French doctor whose name I forget, 90. I can't remember if it was 93 or 95. There's a video of the guy saying, fuck, we gotta stop this shit. We can actually control people's brains with like radio waves, microwaves, from a distance. We can do that now, and it's just gonna get worse. We gotta stop this stuff. Now you've got 5G antennas. Apparently, tinfoil hat on, apparently a lot of people have now got graphite in their system, apparently, supposedly, conspiracy theory, right? And apparently this graphite thing can like connect together and create little nanites inside your body that like receives electromagnetic waves. In fact, electromagnetic waves affect and move and can create different effects in the so-called graphite slash nanites. So if you see it in a whole atmosphere with like little heavy metal particles, well, guess what? All those fucking 5G things can go. And this theory is also in science fiction, which science fiction very often predicts the future and is also put there to like seed certain ideas, like the hold of Iron Dome. Have you heard of that concept where like eventually the planet gets like surrounded by an iron dome. You can't see the sun. It's always dark, and everything is artificial. And you're basically locked into not just your basement with a VR set, but inside a building that's inside an iron dome. The whole planet's, Bill Gates wants to block out the sun. It's not bullshit. Not a science fiction. He's been doing tests. They've been doing tests where they're shooting up like fucking chalk and all sorts of crap to like, oh, make it more like dark so that the sun can't penetrate because of the climate change. A lot of fucking horseshit. They're just basically trying to fuck us up. There's Satanists in the wind. Remind me what the name of the wind is again. Oh, was that with Jodie Foster? Whispering Wind, something like that. Rich0292 says, all there in the 90s because it's in autobiography. Joking. He kind of is. I mean, like, the main character in Nancy Moon is the epitome of Mary Sue's, but it was the only way I could sort of do it because a very good friend of mine, we did a karate grading together where we kicked the shit out of each other and we skipped a belt actually. And he was one of the first guys that read the first book. And he told me like, man, I read your book. It's like I'm reading the thing and I'm like going, unrealistic, unrealistic. No, this character's just too cool. It's unrealistic. And then it's like, but I know you. And I'm like, fuck. It's not unrealistic because this fucker's done all this shit. It's like, so it's not unrealistic, guys. It may sound very unrealistic, but it isn't. So yeah. Times of Truth says, does the jabby dabby do have something to do with 5G? Yes, I believe it does. I sense the jabby dabby do has changed the behavior of some people, but maybe I'm going crazy. No, I had a very interesting conversation with a lady that works at one of the hardware stores I go to quite frequently for my farming stuff. One of the guys that was there got ill. Mysteriously, sudden illness. So he's gone off work. And, I said to her, like, oh, I heard so and so was a bit ill. And she's like, well, yeah, I nearly left the job. And I'm like, oh, what, are you ill? And she goes, no, I'm not ill because I don't have suddenly any illness. I don't suddenly get ill because I don't have suddenly. So, but the owners of the place are gone stir fucking crazy. And I think it's because of, people suddenly getting ill, and some people are suddenly getting a little bit mental. And she made a connection, which I was like, I'm pretty isolated. I don't like people to begin with. I'm in the middle of nowhere, specifically surrounded by forest and no neighbors. So I don't get to interact with a lot of people much, but when I do um, interact with people that are susceptible to getting suddenly ill, I have definitely noticed there's a level of if I try to translate from Italian, it would be malsanity. So it's not insanity and it's not disease. It's a malsanity. It's like an unhealthy level of sanity. And yeah, I absolutely believe that there is a certain thing. Iron Dome sounds like Starlink. That's going to be 72,000 satellites. Then comes Neuralink. You can't make it up. All that for faster internet. Sure. Yep. And oh, let me just. Hello. Give me a sec, guys. Hello. Hello. Dropped it. Let me just see. Who was that? Give me a second. Sorry. Talk amongst yourselves or ask me some more questions. I'll answer them in a second. Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry about that. All right. Bramwell the Drunken Gnome. Living the hermit life sounds ideal. God bless you and your family, Mr. Lotte. Thank you. And by the way, guys, feel free to send fat super chats or buy my books by the pallet load. Because my next mission here is I do need a tractor, but regardless of whether I get one or not, I want to build a greenhouse. But the thing is, I don't want to build a half-assed job. I want to actually do a decent job first time round, which means I need some material and equipment to do a decent job. And look, you know, it's Christmas, so I'm gonna say that the coolest thing you could do for me, other than buying pallets out of my books, is spread the word to your friends about the blog, about the books. There's the little I'll put it again in the chat. The That's where all my ebooks are gonna go on there. I'm not gonna have any more ebooks on Amazon. There's still a few ebooks on Amazon running for a few weeks because contractual obligations, etc. But once those are over, all the ebooks are going up on this site that I've just sent you there, which you can find by this link, or you can go to my blog and go to the shop on the blog, and there's a big button at the top. You click on that, it takes you to the e-store, or go to my blog and go to books I wrote, and there's a big button at the top, and all the ebooks will be there. They're going to be cheaper than if you were to buy them at Amazon, and that's why I'm not putting the ebooks on Amazon anymore. Amazon is just going to be used for the paper books. And I am planning to have more books coming out. There's another little book I'm writing out of sort of requests from people for the last 20 years. People have been asking me to write something about relationships and women and whatever. So I'm going to do that because people have kind of been bugging me for a long time to do that. And I don't, my nonfiction books are, The Face on Mars comes as a result of like me studying astronomy since I was a little kid. The Sistema book comes as a result of me doing martial arts since I was a little kid. And Reclaiming the Catholic Church comes after 7 years of absolutely intensive, obsessive study of the church after almost a lifetime, since I was a teenager, of reading philosophy and religion books, of different religions. So my nonfiction books are based on actual, very hardcore decades of experience. They're not willy-nilly, but the book on relationships and women and so on, I feel a little bit underqualified to write it for a reason that, not underqualified, but it's like a difficult book to write, and I don't know that you'll ever really get that right ever. But I wrote Believe that way. Believe was a very short book that I wrote before I wrote Reclaiming the Catholic Church. Reclaiming the Catholic Church is hardcore facts, and there's Believe is a little bit more like my general philosophy on Christianity. And it's a little book, but it's obviously had an effect because there's over, like I said, there's over 100 people now that have converted, got baptized, became proper sedevacantists. So maybe I should do the same thing as a result of, I get a lot of emails, and it's becoming a little bit time consuming to try and keep up with them, from like young guys that are like in a relationship or want to get in a relationship or want to get married and have kids, but they're not sure if their girlfriend is the right one, whatever. They send me all these emails, and I write back, and like quite a few of them have, as a result of this, and I did this even before I was like really, well, I've been online a long time, but certainly before I was doing streams or anything. I've helped people that didn't, they were like 29-year-old virgins or whatever. Now they've got girlfriends, they're getting married, whatever. So I do have some insight into it, but I've also been divorced twice. I've been with a lot of women. It's like there is a bunch of experience there, but it's not like Mars or martial arts is also an endless topic, but I felt I had definitely enough experience after more than 30 years of like doing martial arts at a high level that I had enough experience there that I could package it in a way that made sense. Um, with relationships, it's a huge, endless topic, and you're talking about people, so there's not like really fine points on it. But I should probably put something together that works. So Willie Ram says, any theory on how Neuralink will be pushed? Graphite in the bloodstream was pushed by inoculation. What's the next excuse? PsyOps. I don't know. They're probably going to put it in food. I think that's what they're trying to do now, or already doing it. I know they're putting mRNA stuff in the various medicines, and I think they're still somewhat labeling it, but you know, who knows when they'll stop labeling it. That's why I kind of want to have a greenhouse and grow my own shit. So if you can help, please help. Do you use Substack? No. A lot of people are writing over there these days. Yes, and it's I think it's a scam because eventually they'll pull the plug, or they can pull the plug, and you're fucked. I've got my own blog. It's on my own, little system. It's backed up regularly, so whatever they do, it'll still exist. Slanty Chauffeur Bear, Hail Kurgan. There is a theory going around that materials in sunlight can transmit 40% of energy from the human body to the 5G towers. Any veracity to this? I don't know. But it's all nefarious shit. Whatever the truth of the matter is, I don't know. But there is no good news coming out. Although, look, there's something else. There's 3 topics I want to write about. Like, one is on the IQ thing that I told you about. There's another topic I want to write on the importance of role-playing games. And again, it's not just to sell you my books, but this one here, Surviving the Current Zombie Apocalypse. Yes, that's me on the cover, and there's the sexy wife. It's not big. It is an entire role-playing game in here. Role-playing games are, and there is a module out. There's the first module to get you started. In case you've never played a role-playing game and you don't know how to start, there you go. Buy these 2 books, you've got an adventure ready for you. Or rather, a bunch of adventures. But the importance of playing role-playing games with actual friends in the real world, sitting around the table, rolling dice and writing up your characters. I can't stress it enough. I know, like, all the younger guys, millennial Zoomers, they're all like, oh, I just play my role-playing games on a computer and I can talk to my friend over the, like, PS4 box or whatever it is now, or PS5 or whatever, or the whatever video games you can, and I can talk with my little. No, it's different. Trust me, it's different. There's a whole different dynamic. There's a whole different set of skills that you learn. There's a whole lot of different interpersonal skills that you learn that you can't learn with a headset on playing a video game. And it's important. I can't stress it enough to you. There you go. This is one of those unique high IQ concepts that, like, people be like, oh, he's just talking. I am telling you, it's important. Please play role-playing games. And if you don't want to play my game, and by the way, this is written in a way to be like funny, and in here it talks about mutants and how some mutants have got superpowers, like being able to pick up radio signals randomly. So there's a little bit of a joke in there about how some technologies that are injected into you can make you have superpowers, for other as side effects. But play role-playing games. You don't have to buy my book. Don't play my role-playing game. It doesn't matter which role-playing game. Get Traveller, the old books. Get the Rule Cyclopedia for Dungeons and Dragons. Pick up Top Secret, one of the old ones. All the new role-playing games are shit because they're super rules heavy. They take ages for you to learn, and you spend up like days making up a character, and then to like just to have a fight, you have to like roll a bunch of that. No. Pick up simple role-playing games. Like, that's a very simple game. It's got a very quick system that you can make even quicker. I've got a couple of role-playing games on the ebooks store. There's the Dirty Old West, which is an even simpler, simplified role-playing game. It's actually a little bit old style in that it's still got a bunch of die modifiers. But if you are a little bit smart, you don't need to do all dice modifier. As a dungeon as the referee, you can basically say, okay, you're shooting at a guy running in the rain. It's at night. You need to roll like an 11 or 2d6 to hit him, or whatever. Or you can go through all the like, okay, it's at this distance and that's a die modifier, and then it's rain and that's a die modifier. So you can do it with like all the little numbers, or you can just half-ass it and make it real quick. So it's really, yeah. Willie Ram says, so avoid GURPS. Yes. GURPS is really cool because of the pictures and the art, and oh, it's got so many different weapons. And then if you try and play GURPS, it's like you're bogged down into like super technical details and shit. And it's like, no. Okay, says Woolly Ram, I think his Twitter/X but was part of the plan to gain trust, then roll out Neuralink to the public. Yeah. Yeah, whatever. I do think Elon Musk is a ticket buyer, but you know, whatever. Who knows? Anyway, I see that it's dropping off. The Nazi stuff has dropped off, so maybe like you guys are sort of leading. I don't know. There's half of you that were here a bit earlier, or maybe it's just rural internet. But anyway, you can ask on any topic you want. I'm gonna go down and refresh my Frizzantino. It'll take me a minute to get another glass. Fire off any questions on any topic. Doesn't have to be Nazis or anti-gravity. It can always be about guns, possibly women. You know, topics that are always good. Women with guns. All right, I'm back. Cheers. Where are we? Woolly Ram says, yeah, wearing armor labeled champion of hell. It's a bit of a giveaway for Musk. Yeah, well, you know, they have to signal. If they're not signaling, then they're getting trouble. Oh, I see that you're all gone quiet. Just as I'm getting into it. Well, back to my, this reminds me, when I was a little kid, we had knives like this. They look very similar, actually, Swedish made. Not particularly good looking or whatever, but it works. And put like wood glue over here, so it's actually pinned in. You can't tell on the video, but it's very smooth here. There's nothing to catch on, or I'm really quite proud of it. I think this will last a long time, or at least until the handle breaks. But it's olive wood is pretty strong, and I've oiled it. I've left it dipped in oil for like a couple of days, and feels very smooth to the touch. Is it a spiritual law that evil has to announce itself? I don't know. I have given that some thought. It certainly seems to be the case, but it depends what you mean by evil. I think possibly spiritual evil, that is evil that stems from actually Satan, whether through his little acolytes and imps or worldly servants or not, in some way may well have to be announced, or at least there must be some element of it that is potentially visible. But when I say that, I mean the same way, like, people say, oh, the church has to be visible. Yes, it is. You got to look for it. It's not just going to be like shining right in your eyeballs. You've got to like research a little bit. You got to want to see it. Seek and ye shall find. I didn't make the knife. The blade is from IKEA, an IKEA knife that the handle just disintegrated, and all it had was like, it's a one-piece knife. So the blade continued into like a steel tang that went to about there. Just a little sort of thin piece of metal that's the continuation of this. I just did the handle. And what it is I took an olive branch, an olive tree that been dried out because it was part of my actually firewood, and I cut it down to size. I drilled a hole in here that was just right to like shove this in. And the drill bit, I had to like connect the drill bit like with only that much of the drill bit connected because it was just the right length to get in there. And then I hammered the blade in by putting a piece of wood on the top into the knife so I don't break the point, and then hammering it down just to get to the point. Then I drilled with a drill bit through the wood so that it would touch on the steel thing, pull the blade out, drill the metal, and this is solid steel. So I broke 3 drill bits drilling one hole to put the pin. I was going to put 2 pins, but I thought once I saw how hard this thing is, I was like, 1 pin will be plenty. And I put the 1 pin in. Um, at first, I sanded the whole handle, banged it back in, put the pin through, and then put like wood glue. That's really hard to seal the hole where a little bit of a hole that was left, to seal that, and to seal the rivet. Or this is a piece of a rivet. I actually pulled out the little bit of that makes it a rivet, so it's just a steel pin. It's just a steel pin through. On this end, the little bubble, I sort of countersunk a little bit so that the bubble went in the little metal head. And on this side it's just the plain pin, but then I covered it with wood glue, so although you can see the pin, it's like actually under a layer of like wood glue. And yeah, I think it's a pretty sturdy, there's no movement, nothing, it's very solid. um Ram says it seems they are almost under few a few band. It seems they're almost under a few band to announce themselves, secure your tacit agreement, and to make you in some way complicit. Yeah. Um, oh, a Fey band. You machine god cursed autocorrect. Yeah. That's actually an interesting topic because on the story of Joan of Arc, which was written by the great, I think it was the great grandson or the grandson of a man that was a contemporary of Joan of Arc. And on his deathbed, he basically told his great nephew or great grandchild, I can't remember, but great nephew, I think, the story about Joan of Arc. And he mentioned how they used to play with like fairies around this tree until the priest banned them, because the kids got hurt. And the priest was like, nah, you creatures are from another plane, so you shouldn't be like fucking around with us humans anyways, because you're from another dimension, whatever. And then the priest banned them, and then, so the Fae couldn't play with the kids anymore. But it was simply written, told to this guy as a matter of fact. So it could be they have a Fae ban. Yeah, that makes some sort of sense, I suppose. All right, it's dropping off because well, it's been 2 hours. You guys are probably going to dinner or whatever. There's only like 10 of you left from I think 30 or whatever it was. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the book Nazi Moon. Those of you that are gonna buy it, and if you are gonna, it's Christmas season, so you should get a chance to play role-playing games with your friends. I don't care how old you are or how young you are. Try it. Just try it once. And again, you can get these ones on the ebooks as well. You can get it as a PDF. The role-playing games, I made them all as PDF, so you can buy it and print it out. You can print it out on paper, and you've got all the rules that you can hold in your hand. And it's like $5. The cheapest role-playing game there is like $5, £5. It's like what, $6? You're not going to break the bank for like $5, and it'll give you a chance to at least have 1 or 2 games with like a couple of friends. Make really simple. The cowboy game, Dirty Old West. It's like $5. You can make a character in like literally like a couple of minutes, and just make it a simple whatever, a duel, a shootout. There's a bank robbery with some bandits, and you're the good guys that have to stop them. That's it. Just make a little movie in your head. The good, the bad, the ugly, whatever. Just please try out a role-playing game. And again, I'm not saying you have to get mine. Get whatever you want, but I don't think that you're going to get a full role-playing game for like $5 anywhere else. So I think Woolly Ram is going to bed. Good night, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. Well, I don't have bed bugs. Lucky enough. Keep a clean house. Well, you know, I was going to say tidy, but that's not true either. But it's kind of clean. It's not tidy, it's messy, but it's kind of clean. At least we don't have bed bugs, okay? What do you want? 11 of you, like the true apostles. Come on, boys. If there's any more questions, speak now or hold your peace. I am going to try and have a little, at least 1 or 2 more streams before the new year, or maybe even before Christmas. We'll see. You have Chinese bugs. I do, the stink bugs. But it's winter now, so they're all died out, frozen, dead. No stink bugs, no mosquitoes, just cold. And I am chopping wood again. It's wood chopping season. But I tell you what, guys, stocking up on wood this year, which I did like in March, and putting it all in the, I built a little wood shed, storage shed, which Gay Adam helped me do. I say Gay Adam because, you know, as those of you who read my blog, he plays half elf, female elves. It's sad. It's disappointing. I had him in my home. Anyway, he helped me like get the frame of it up anyway, and then the wood drying sort of storage area. It works really well. It's protected from the rain. I've made sure it's all covered up. And the wood that I'm burning from the, the stove has been on for more than a month now. Not one blockage, nothing, because the wood's not wet. It's all dry, burns really nicely. Tides of Truth says, I'm assuming referring to the role-playing game, of course, let's just be clear. It's a role-playing game based on all the conspiracy theory. In fact, let me read you the back of the book. Apart from the fact that the cover has got like a really astonishingly handsome guy on the cover, and you know, woman's not bad too. It says, using every conspiracy theory doing the rounds on the internet, surviving the current zombie apocalypse is a role-playing game that uses a revolutionary yet traditional system, the Quick Omni Role-Playing Game, or QORG, Quick Omni Role-Playing Game. Using only 2 6-sided dice, pen, paper, and your imagination, you can now take part with your friends in the gritty and deadly situation that begins in late 2022 AD. Will you survive? See if you have what it takes to make it in this funny, entertaining, and revolutionary game. So yes, and by the way, some of the reviews, some of the people that read this have said this is one of the funniest things they've ever read, regardless of whether you actually play the game or not. And again, it's on the webs, in the ebook, which you can get as a PDF, so you can print it out. It's like £15. It's, if you get the paper copy like from Amazon, it is like full color on inside, and it's got like a bunch of like pictures and stuff. There's not getting any of the pictures. There's always a bit of Easter eggs in my books. So you know, like my dad's actually in one of the one of the images in here. I won't tell you which one, but there you go. It's got, you know, it is full color interior. That's why it's a little bit expensive on Amazon, but it's like $15 on as a PDF on the ebook store. Tides of Truth so asks, how can they jab the NPC types now sense immediately when you aren't on their team? It's uncanny. It's a good point. That might be a special. And again, you know, if you play role-playing games, you can make up your own rules. You know, house rules are always a thing. So in your version of this game, you might have the mutants are able to sense. They've got a superpower, you know, to sense like non-mutants. You know, it's yeah. And I think it goes both ways. Kind of like a paladin skill, you can sense evil, you know. role-playing games are great, not just for their interaction with other people, but they force you to use your brain. They force you to use your imagination, and that's super important because you're basically role-playing. You can role-play any scenario. We used to play Traveler, right? Which you think, oh, well, what? That's got no relationship to real life. Well, in Traveler, because it's a pretty, realistic game, you got to figure out your vectors for when you're doing a slingshot around the planet to accelerate your spaceship. Because if your spaceship's engines are screwed up, you might get sucked into a gas giant and just, or maybe you're hiding from like that Imperial starship because you're trying to like smuggle something through. And by the time we went to physics and we had to study vector, like in physics, I was like, I could sleep. I was like drawing up characters for Dungeons and Dragons in my physics class because literally everything they were doing in physics we'd already covered just because of playing role-playing games. And you think, oh, well, Dungeons and Dragons doesn't help you. And it's like, no, it does. Because we get stuck in dungeons. You know, we our DM was sometimes a bit hard. We didn't have weapons or our swords broke or we didn't have armor and we had to like trap and we had to get out. And we'd come up with these like fucked up scenarios. It's like, well, I'm going to invent a way to get out of this. Guess what? Working on a farm where all sorts of weird shit happens and things go wrong and you got to build something out of something and then you only got like broken bits of wood and some masking tape and like spit and baling wire and an axe, and all of a sudden you can build a go-kart. It's like, what? you know, I'm telling you, it's like an exercise for your brain. It's like going to the gym for your brain, and your brain is more important than the exercise you do in the gym. Because if you've got a good brain, even if you're not 6'4" and like can lift 300 pounds, you can still get shit done. So play role-playing games. It's good. It's useful. Please believe me. Don't. It's not about books. I'm not gonna make my living by selling like £5 role-playing games or £15. This is the £15 one. If you buy this PDF and you got a color printer, you can own it in paper copy by printing out the PDFs. And I make the role-playing games as PDFs so that you can print them out, because back in the halcyon days when I was in Africa, and like, if between the 10 of you, like one of you got a Dungeons and Dragons manual or like, a monster manual, one guy would have it and everybody else would like photocopy it because you couldn't get them. It was like really hard to get those books. And I want guys to play the game. So yes, okay, it's $15, but I don't care if you download it as a PDF, photocopy it and hand it out to all your friends, all right? It would be nice if you contribute and send me some money, but I don't really care about that too much. I want you guys to play role-playing games. It's important. I'm not just fucking around. I'm telling you, it's important. The fake witch doctor says managers at my workplace credit tabletop role-playing games for their success. Yes, absolutely. It teaches you finances. It teaches you like bottom line. It teaches you what's important in a context of an extreme situation, which is the game. But guess what? When you start working and people are like, and these are the rules you have to use, and this is the special word, and it's like, what's this whole fucking thing about? It's about money. It's about making money. Oh, what are we doing? Oh, we're building rocket ships, or we're building buildings, or we're selling tires, or we're selling blue widgets. It doesn't fucking matter. What's the rule of the game? Make money. That's it. That's the bottom line. And now you can have all the fancy words and, I've got to wear a tie. Oh, okay, I got to wear a tie. Charm spell. I got to wear the bullshit tie to get to speak to like the king or the bishop or whatever. Okay, I wear the fancy tie. Oh, I got a fancy tie. I speak the right words. Oh, look, I've got all the little magic item. I got all the ingredients to make the magic spell, which is make fucking money. That's it. And if you're playing role-playing games, oh, I'm a magic user. I don't have the armor, but I've got spells. I'm going to use this spell to do this thing. One of the coolest games I played was Vault of the Drow, which is actually a pretty hard module. I got stuck with a paladin called Philotomy Jurament just because of the name of the paladin was Philotomy Jurament. So it's like, oh, that's you. I'm like, I don't want to play a fucking paladin in AD&D. It's like lawful good. Like in basic D&D, you're just lawful or chaotic or neutral. You can play a paladin pretty cool. But in AD&D, they made him lawful good, so he has to be the goody two-shoes all the time. My brother got the mage, and the way my brother was using his spells is very imaginative. You know, he had like a web spell, and like the drow also have magic things, and one of the magic spells of the drow, there's like evil elves, but like they cast mirror image, where it's like you get up to like 4 different characters and you don't know which one is real. And anytime you attack, you have to roll like a 1 or whatever to hit the real one. And he's like, yeah, fuck that, I'm not doing that. I just cast a web spell, catch all of the fucking illusions and the real one. And he got them. I was like, shit. You know, like my brother's very good with like using spells in a very imaginative ways that you wouldn't think to use them. I'm more like a hack and slash and like fighting, like get that special skill that I can shoot an arrow at a distance or whatever, you know. So we make a good team. Um, but that's the thing, it forces you to use your brain. And once you know to use your brain to get an imaginative solution to a problem, guess what? You're going to come up with an imaginative solution to any problem, regardless of whether it's role-playing games or real life, you know. So that's the whole point of role-playing games. And this particular role-playing game is set into, well, our world, you know. So think of that. All right, guys, it seems like you're all dropping off. You probably all have families to go to, dinners to eat, and presents to wrap. So, as do I. So, I'm going to finish up my little drink in case there's 1 or 2 more questions or comments, and then I'll call it a night. Wow, man, the time flies when you're having fun. I didn't realize it's over 2 hours. Well, I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you all for being here this close to Christmas. I know people are busy. I hope you enjoyed some of the information that I told you guys about the Nazis and technology and so on. Because, and again, go buy Nazi Moon. I'm telling you, it's a good read. I'm not telling you that just because I wrote it. I really think it's the kind of book that I'd like to read. Um, so hopefully you'll enjoy it too. Anyway, that's it for tonight. Thank you very much. Have a good night. I think we'll see each other before Christmas, but in case you can't make the next stream or whatever, I wish you a very, very, very happy Christmas and a very good and positive start to 2024. But I will be doing a live stream or two before maybe Christmas, before New Year, certainly at least a couple of live streams before then. So keep very well and have a good night. Thank you all.